Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I've been looking on the internet and I've seen all these comments about Bryan Kohberger's alibi, and people are going, What kind of alibi is that anyway?" So I've been watching all the discussions, and I thought I would come here and clear up three things. First of all, what is an alibi? Two, what is a non-alibi alibi? Now, mind you, don't go googling that because I did make that up. A non-alibi alibi. And three, why is he using a non-alibi alibi? Because that's what I think he does. He is using, or what his lawyer is using. Let me start going through these. All right. Number one, what is an alibi? Well, an alibi is something that proves you could not have committed the crime because you were unable to do it for some reason. Now, let's look at some of the reasons why you couldn't have done it. One, you're dead. Believe it or not, people have been accused of crimes and they couldn't have done it because maybe they died 3 hours earlier. Okay, that's a good alibi, probably the best one out there. Two, you were in the ICU, hooked up to a ventilator, couldn't have committed the crime. Three, you were in jail. That's a pretty good, darn good place to be. You got a lot of witnesses there. You got a lot of people. You've been signed in. Everybody knows you're there. Jail is a great alibi. All right, those are the three big ones. Along with those, we can say if you were incapacitated in some way that made it absolutely impossible for you to commit the crime. Let's say, or you had a disability. Let's say you're blind. This would be a crime you probably could not commit. So that's a good alibi. Doesn't mean a blind person can't kill somebody, but this would not be the particular crime that a blind person would be able to do. So their alibi is, I'm blind. So if you had some reason, some disability, incapacitation of some sort, you simply could not have done it. Those are alibis. Now let's look at some other kinds of alibis. You were physically too far away from the location to commit the crime. Let's say you were actually in Japan and there was evidence that you had flown to Japan and you didn't have time to fly back from Japan. That's a great alibi. Maybe you were halfway across the country and you have evidence that proves you were halfway across the country. Again, a great alibi. Let's see, what other one might you have? You were on television at the time. I've done a lot of television in my life, and I'm sitting in the studio and I'm on camera. Pretty much I couldn't have done that crime. That's a great alibi. Or let's say you are a preacher. You're over at your church, and at the time the crimes went down, you were conducting a sermon, and you've got the entire congregation says, yeah, he was standing right up in front. That's a great alibi. All right, those are your good alibis. Now, there are other alibis which are not so good, all right? Things that you might have trouble proving, all right? So I started out by calling those non-alibi alibis. In other words, what would they be? One, you were home sleeping. Okay, you're by yourself, you're in your house, how good an alibi is that? And there is a way that it can be a good alibi. What is it? If you have cameras on the street and the cameras show you entering your home, never leaving your home, all right, then that alibi will become a real alibi. Let's say, this is another good one. Mom says I was home with her. My girlfriend says I was home with her. The amount of people who will lie to help someone they care about, keep them out of trouble. Oh, they lie like crazy. Again, if it's your mommy or your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, or whomever, you better have video of you not leaving that location, because it's just not good enough that somebody that close to you is vouching for you being there all night long. So the only way that non-alibi turns into a true alibi is with video camera. Something's got to prove you stayed in that place besides those people saying you did. All right, the third one here, that's his. I was out driving around. Because that lawyer said he just loved just driving around all night long because he couldn't sleep. And hey, that's a perfectly normal habit for him. So, just because he happens to have a habit of driving around at night, don't blame him for a murder or for murders. But That's not a very good alibi. It's a non-alibi alibi unless you can prove you were in that vehicle and you were in certain locations that could prove you couldn't have committed the crime. What would that be? Again, we got video cameras, we've got traffic cameras, we've got store cameras, house cameras. You went into a convenience store and picked up a soda, that camera. You need all of that to prove that your car did not go anywhere near that place where people got killed, or that it was so far away at the time, it's just you couldn't have done it. That would be a good alibi. But it starts out as a non-alibi alibi until you can get that proof in. It's not a simple one, like I was in jail, couldn't have done it. You don't need cameras because I was in jail. But his non-alibi alibi, they got to come up with more than he says he was out driving. Now, let's go to why did they use this alibi or non-alibi alibi? Because he hasn't got another one. That's the problem. And he could have used, I was just sleeping in my place, but apparently his car was not staying there. So, there's a problem there. If the car leaves, then he's got to say he was driving about. Where is the car caught on camera? Where is there any proof somewhere that he was in the vehicle far enough away from the student's home not to have committed the crime? He would have to have that to make this a true alibi, to say it's impossible. I couldn't have done it because you saw me going through, a toll booth while the crime was going on. You see me in a toll booth. My car is there. You see my face. I was at the ATM. There's my car. There's my face. That's when it turns into a true alibi. Apparently he doesn't have that. So now the question is, why even use that? Well, again, he didn't have another one, but I think there's another reason a defense attorney will go there. Here's what happens. When you have a case, which I'm not saying Bryan Kohberger is guilty. He is innocent until proven guilty. And there's a lot of people out there saying, I think he's innocent. I think he's innocent. Somebody planted the sheath. His DNA could have flown over there somehow. Like touch DNA, it does happen, but not in probably the way that this turned out. But yes, it has to be proven. And here's what the defense does when they've got a case that is not going well for them. They have to come up with anything. Now, if they can't come up with any camera, any video that puts him in a place that's too far from the crime to have committed it, let's say no video shows up at all, they will come up with two claims. One, they'll say, did the police check every camera? What if the police didn't check all the proper cameras? That's why he's not caught on camera, because the police didn't do their job. He was driving around, but they didn't check that camera and they didn't check that camera. And he could have gone down this street, which didn't have a camera on it, come up here, but they didn't check that camera. They can make up any story they want to about how the police didn't do due diligence finding all the video. Now the police come back and say, we have a list here of all the cameras we checked. And it's like a really long list. Then they can do other things. They can claim, they're claiming he wasn't seen on camera, but do we have proof he wasn't seen on camera? Do they have the footage of every one of those cameras? And then they can claim, we think that they got rid of any footage of him on camera at a location where he couldn't have committed the crime. So now we're going to get into corruption. We're going to get into hiding evidence. Well, when you've got a case which isn't going well, and his is not going well for him, the way our system works, which isn't a system that's based on honorableness and only telling the truth. It's based on, you can play any game you want to play and you can lie like a dog. It doesn't matter. I don't mean the defendant. I mean the attorneys. They can say anything. And so therefore, all they have to do is convince 12 people on that jury, or at least one of them, that, my God, maybe they did hide those videos of him being someplace else. Maybe they didn't check properly. That's all they have to do. Now, is it going to be successful? Maybe not, but what else they got going for him? And he does not have a real alibi. So he's gone with the non-alibi alibi. And unless anything ever comes up to prove that he really couldn't have done it, it's going to stay a non-alibi alibi. But it still can be useful for the defense because that's the games they play. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this. Hope you liked it. Anyway, please do subscribe to the channel. Please do like this video. And let's see what they come up with next. I'm kind of curious. Bye.